So is it possible that you are Bashar in the future?
Yes, he's actually said that's a linear way to look at it. You could look at it as the same soul in two different time planes that have the ability to interact with each other because everything does exist at the same time. So it doesn't take away from the autonomousness of my identity or his identity, but he has the capability based on where they're at in their evolution of being able to connect to other versions, let's say, of the soul in other timelines. So yes, that's one way it could be looked at.
When you are channeling, are you aware of what's going on?
I don't really hear exactly what's happening. I know there's an interchange happening. I know there's an exchange going on, a communication happening. But what I'm experiencing is so much more overwhelming than the conversation, which is a very secondary level of a translation of his thoughts. So I sometimes liken it to the idea that I'm getting all this energy, I'm getting images. Time is really compressed for me. I can feel the emotionality. I can feel what he feels. And it's the energetically, it's sort of like I liken it to sort of standing under a pounding waterfall. The audience is getting the spray. I'm getting the initial feed. And when someone asks a question, the entire answer is there in the blink of an eye. But it takes time for it to unspool into our language because he's not speaking English. He's just sending thoughts. And I'm programmed with English. That's how I was raised. And so it takes time for my brain to make sense out of how to unspool that into a translation that makes sense for the audience that's listening. But I'm experiencing this in a very time compressed way so that I'm getting these flashes of concepts, whole concepts. I'm getting imagery of um, like symbolic kind of forms and shapes that Bashar says is in and of itself a kind of language that they've learned to read that tells him what he needs to know about the person he's talking to. Sort of like certain patterns and imagery stand out to him. And that's what lets him know what he can and can't address with this person. So it's a really dynamic daydream kind of state of being. And the words themselves are very secondary. It might as well be a conversation that somebody is having in another room somewhere. You know how like when you're in a deep daydream and somebody walks in the room and maybe they have to call your name like three times before you know someone's talking to you. It's kind of like that. I'm so focused on the experience I'm having that I can't really pay attention to the actual translation that someone else is getting without breaking the connection with him.
Well, it's amazing how quickly this process works because Bashar's answers are like seamless in time. Another thing
Yeah.
I want to say real quick is that what I love about Bashar is he is an amazing listener because there is not one comment from the questioner that goes by him. He comments on everything.
Yeah. When we did First Contact, the documentary about the channeling, one of the things we wanted to do with that was to demystify the whole concept of what channeling is about. Because everyone actually channels at times when they're in the zone, when they're doing what they love to do, they go into a channeling state, which is a brainwave state that's called gamma between 40 and 100 cycles per second. And what we wanted to do is we wired up my head with an EEG machine in the documentary so that we could really see, is there differences in my brain between when I'm awake and acting normally as myself and when I'm channeling? And we discovered some profound differences. And one of them, as you just pointed out, is that there are significant changes in my brain when Bashar is speaking, but there are even more significant changes when he's listening. He actually listens with more intensity than he speaks. So you're right. The EEG actually demonstrated scientifically that there is a higher frequency going on in my brain when Bashar listens than when he speaks.
Hmm.
So yeah, very focused.